Howdy, folks. This is a Mad Painter, and I'm filling in for Mark tonight. I got him a gig so I could take his spot. You know, you know how it is. You got to hog all the airtime when you can get a chance to. I got a special guest. I think we're going to have a great conversation. My guest tonight is going to be Brad Olsen, who is a publisher of over 20 books, the author of 9 books. He has won many awards for his publication. He's been on the Travel Channel, Ancient Aliens, and he's even been on me and Mark's show, Open Canvas. He is a contributing editor of World Explorer magazine. He enjoys public speaking on sacred places and mysterious esoteric subjects. Uh, we have talked about ancient American history on Open Canvas with him one night on a round table, and I just thought he was pretty awesome, and I would like to welcome back Brad Olsen. So, excuse me, I'm tripping over my tongue. How you doing this evening?
Doing great. I'm a painter. Thanks for
usually
having
Mark
me
does the intro.
Yeah.
So now it's been a while since you've been on Ancient Aliens, right?
Well, I was
A
on
couple years
2
back.
episodes in season 6. That was a couple years ago, but I was flown down to LA last month and shot potentially 9 episodes.
Oh,
We'll see
wow.
how many actually work out. But the very first season 6 I was on, I shot for 3 episodes with one producer, and this time 3 shows each for 3 producers. So let's see what ends up on the cutting room floor and what actually makes the cut.
Yeah, that's where the production's made, isn't it?
That's the big difference. But I think I'll have some sort of presence, and those will start to debut in April, and I imagine it'll go all the way through June. I think they have season 9 has 16 new episodes coming up, so that'll take a while to get them all to air. But they're working on it now.
That sounds great. Now you're the author of 9 books.
Yeah.
Now I'm in the middle of your latest one, but I haven't had a chance to read your other ones. Now you've done one book on sacred places out west, right?
Yeah, right. So I guess I could give you a quick update on it all. The books get more and more complex and build upon the Sacred Places books as time goes on, including the book you're reading right now, which is Modern Esoteric Beyond Our Senses. So basically,
which I should
started.
Have mentioned.
Yeah,
I didn't
I'll do
say
it
the
for
title.
you. No worries. Basically, I started out as a travel writer, and I still do travel writing gigs. I was just in the Philippines a couple weeks ago, and I have a couple writing projects, including an article about the Chocolate Hills that I'm going to submit to World Explorer magazine. My good friend David Hatcher Childress over there at the WEX Clubhouse in Arizona, and he and I are both going to be speakers at Contact in the Desert early June. So I wanted to get that in there before it's too late. But anyways, I started as a travel writer and had a great run at it for about 15 years. My first book was called World Stompers, a global travel manifesto, and it was based on my 3-year trip around the world. It's still in print and still selling pretty good. It's in its 5th edition, and it's kind of a timeless classic. And
so you were in no hurry to get around the world then, huh?
Yeah.
I like that. That's awesome.
It's a big planet out there. There's a lot to see. You get dragged in at certain times in certain places that sometimes last for weeks or even months. So you just got to go with the flow. But I was out of the country from 92 to 94, and I did not see any friends or family members apart from my dad, who came and visited me while I was a English teacher in Japan. And he came out for 2 weeks, and we still talk about that trip in high regards. It was a really wonderful time that we got to spend together, and I got to show him around the very unique Japanese culture around Kyoto, which was the city where I lived and taught English. And that was how I was able to save the money to self-finance my own trip around the world. And it was as much of an education as my 5 years at Illinois State University. It was a really eye-opening experience that I highly recommend to any person who has a little bit of time and money and the desire to do a trip like this. So when I got back, I had the material to put together into this book, World Stompers, and then it did well. It found me my distributor, Independent Publishers Group. And I even did 2 books with another publisher, Hunter Publishing. I did this series of books called Extreme Adventures, pretty much out of print those. But I realized, and largely through my friend David Hatcher Childress, that publishing was the way to go. So I took it upon myself to start my own publishing business called CCC Publishing. It's, by the way, the name of our website. Still going strong with new authors and my own books. And just to round out the story of travel writing, from the Extreme Adventure books through Hunter, that led to In Search of Adventure, which was a travel anthology I did with a fellow travel writer named Bruce Northam, who may be listening right now. And he and I were just together traveling in the Philippines a few weeks ago. So we're still good friends after all these years, 20 plus years later. And then that led me to these Sacred Places guides. And I realized around the year 2000 that here was a great opportunity to do a different kind of travel guide that really hadn't been done before. So I came out with Around the World First, which is 108 destinations on every continent except for Antarctica. And that one did very well. So I came out with Sacred Places North America, which is now in a 2nd edition. And those are the sites out west, and as well as all around the country and Canada too. And I did Sacred Places Europe and published Karen Tate, an author in LA, and she did the book Sacred Places of Goddess. So there were 4 of those books in the series. So then I realized that travel publishing was taking a bit of a turn in the wrong direction with the advent of the internet in the early 2000s. And that is because people can pretty much search and find any information about just about any location around the world. And I don't know if you've noticed, but I certainly have, that travel aisles in bookstores have been shrinking dramatically as a result. And that certainly cut into the sales that I was building up to at that point. So about 10 years ago, I kind of had a soul searching moment and decided, if I'm going to stay in publishing, I need to find some kind of subject matter that's just not so easily distributed and found on the internet, kind of like hard to get information that people are willing to pay for. And this is what led me to the esoteric series. And in fact, that word esoteric is kind of along those lines, that it's a select few that will seek out this kind of information. And you're reading Modern Esoteric, and that's actually the first book in this series. And then the second book is called Future Esoteric, The Unseen Realms. And that gets more into the exopolitics and the ET issue. And that book has done so well that a 2nd edition of that book, Future Esoteric, will be coming out in April.
Well, what I've read so far, it gives a comprehensive look at the history.
That's right. So if I were to give a 30-second elevator pitch to the CEO of Random House, I would say, so Modern Esoteric is the beginning of humanity, the beginning of civilization on this planet, with antediluvian civilizations all the way up to this modern age. Whereas Future Esoteric takes a forward-looking view and includes many of the subjects involved in exopolitics, as well as a final section called Utopia. And I'm actually working on a 3rd book in this series called Beyond Esoteric, The Ultimate Journey, but it's not going to be out until about 2018. But, you know, years go by quick. A mad painter, you know,
especially when you get my age.
Next thing you know, holy shoot, it's 2618. I better get this book out. No, but I'm working on it just about every day when I get some time or find new material. And that will be a great one. But it will be the 3rd and final segment of the esoteric series. So I really want to put a really fine polish on it. Plus, there's a lot of things that are happening right now in this year. 2016 is a very pivotal year with the presidential election and so much going on in Syria and around the world, that I kind of want to see how things play out. And as we go down the road to 2020, this is meant to be the time of full implementation of the New World Order. And this is according to CCC Publishing author Leo Lion-Zagami. And I'm just finally finishing the edit of Confessions of an Illuminati, Volume 2, which is an amazing book, but 545 pages. So a big, thick one that's going to complement his very highly anticipated and very well-selling book, Confessions of an Illuminati, Volume 1. And we have a Volume 3 to come out, as well as The Invisible Master. And those will be coming out in 2017. So as soon as we get Leo Zagami's next 3 books done and released, then Beyond Esoteric is next slated to be published.
Well, I'll tell you what, they're awesome. Me reading this, I'm becoming a fan of your books.
Oh, thank you.
Now, your book about sacred places, what is the most impressive place that you have been to as far as sacred places?
Oh, geez. Where haven't I been? I've still traveled quite extensively, and any opportunity I get to check out new locations, I love it. But I'll even go back and repeat every time I'm out east for the book expo. I always schedule another week or two so I can go up into New England and check out the stone chambers up there. And in fact, I did a DVD, which is only available on cccpublishing.com and Amazon, which goes through CCC Publishing, about the stone chambers. And I did a profile on 4 of them. Interestingly, they all have astronomical alignments. They're all made of mortar-free stacked rocks under dirt with lintel capstones and megalithic architecture in the beehive chamber style, which is only found in northern UK, such as the Orkney Islands, Scotland, Ireland, and parts of northern Europe that had once been part of the Neolithic megalithic cultures, more commonly known as dolmen. And basically what dolmen are, and you find them all across northwestern Europe, are megalithic stones that is all that remains of what could have been a beehive chamber, because those smaller stones, since they weren't using mortar, have long been yanked out and probably used in other ways. So the all that remains in Europe, for the most part, are just the dolmen core structure of megalithic stones, whereas there are some beehive chambers that still do exist in the Orkneys, Skelling Michael outside of northwestern Ireland. It's an island. And these are the sites that I featured in the book, Sacred Places Europe. So I really got excited about writing about these subjects. And of course, as I mentioned, travel kind of took a turn south about 10 years ago. But I realized many of these places had so much more to them and such a great backstory that in many ways, the book that you're reading now, Modern Esoteric, picks up the mantle on some of the more mysterious sites, new information about the Great Pyramids, crop circles, of course, in Future Esoteric chapter, as well as many of the mysteries surrounding some of the megalithic sites in the world.
So now, do you think there's a direct connection between these stone chambers with England pre-Columbian?
Well, actually, I do. I think they are prehistoric stone chambers. I think they go all the way back to at least the Chaldee monks, who were these Celtic monks that were fleeing the Viking invasions of Europe way back in about 800 AD. And they were known to build beehive chambers, and they were the ones who built Skelling Michael in Ireland and several other examples in the far north of Europe. So that is the most likely candidate. But if you were to go to a location called America's Stonehenge in New Hampshire, which I've been to many times and have talked to the curator, Bob Stone, about on many occasions. He has evidence that America's Stonehenge, which are beehive chambers and dolmen chambers, as well as a big sacrificial table, goes all the way back to Phoenician times. And this is very interesting because the one show on the History Channel I was on with Scott Walter called America Unearthed, we talked about the Wabansi stone, which is a very ancient stone, the oldest relic of Chicago, and that happens to be the city of my birth, and a location I've been very interested in and for many, many years. So it was quite an honor to talk to Scott Walter about the
Well,
Wabansi stone, and indeed, we all came to the conclusion on the show, including some other guests who were on, that this was Phoenician.
I missed the name of that both times. Could you say it again?
Sure. The Wabansi stone is a reported Phoenician altar stone that was found on the banks of the Chicago River, the oldest known relic in the city of Chicago. And Scott Walter and I did our photo shoot, video shoot, in a place called Lyons, Illinois, and it's a location called Mud Lake, and it was the portage between the south branch of the Chicago River, and in times of heavy rain in the springtime, you could actually get a heavily laden boat full of presumably copper ore. And this is the story of the Phoenicians coming to America, that they had different colonies and different places that they were very interested in going, most especially the northern upper peninsula of Michigan, as well as Isle Royale and other locations around Lake Superior on the Canada side, where these very ancient open pit copper mines have been discovered by the hundreds. I've been out there and seen them, and they found the artifacts that they used to chop away the copper. This is the richest vein of copper on the planet. And even the most stodgy historian who will have nothing to do with Phoenicians in America has to admit they don't have any clue where all this tonnage of copper went. Well, I'll tell you where it went. It went right to the Mediterranean region and supplied the armaments for the Bronze Age. And this is what the great Greek poet Homer wrote about in his Iliad and Odyssey, where the Bronze Age was this glorious time where not only armaments, which would help armies control certain areas of the Mediterranean region, but created beautiful works of art as well. So how this all ties into the Phoenicians in ancient America is that they would come in with an empty ship. The journey would take upwards of 3 years, maybe even longer, because it would take about a year to get across the Atlantic. And they went the same way the Chaldee monks went. They went the same way the Vikings went, which was basically, the Chaldee monks called it the stepping stones. They would basically follow the current and rarely lose sight of land. And this is what I have to say to any of those stodgy historians who dispute prehistoric Europeans coming to North America. If you never lose sight of land and you're following the currents, and you can see the seabirds, and many of these mariners use the night sky to navigate, it just takes you right past Greenland to the Labrador coast. And from the Labrador coast, you get carried southbound on the Labrador current. And that'll take you all the way to where the Gulf Stream meets, and that's around North Carolina. But you didn't even need to go that far south, because there was plenty of pickings right there in New England. And that's where the Phoenicians landed, and that's where the Vikings landed. But in the case of going into the Midwest, what they would do is take the St. Lawrence Seaway to Lake Ontario. And there's one major blockage from carrying on up the Great Lakes system. Do you know what that is?
Niagara Falls, because
You got it.
I'm from right there.
Oh, you're good. Good. And that's Niagara Falls. So there is what's called the Niagara Escarpment, and that goes through southern Ontario. And I went and charted this out when I was working on Sacred Places North America. Today it's called the Trent Severn Waterway, and it's a series of locks and dams, and it's a major waterway between Lake Huron and Lake Ontario. Well, if you had an empty ship and you had 30 or 40 or 50 men pulling the ship, an empty ship, up over the Niagara Escarpment and dropping it into Lake Huron and Lake Superior and Lake Michigan are all at about the same elevation. Lake Superior is slightly higher with some wide rapids there at Sault Ste. Marie. Not too hard to navigate a ship through. But the big prize was, like I said, the northern peninsula of Michigan and Isle Royale. And so they would have been mining the copper there for at least a summer, maybe two, to get their hold filled. And then when they would get ready to go, they were very vulnerable because the ship was very heavy. It was low to the water. It was much slower moving. But when they were traveling in the Great Lakes, they were quite safe because they could stay quite a bit distance away from the shore and not be detected. But when they got to the mouth of the Chicago River, that's when everything changed. And that's why all the leading cultural diffusionist historians believe in the theory that the Wabanzi stone in Chicago was a Phoenician altar, which could be the oldest pagan temple in North America. And the reason that that place was so important is because they had to change the outfit of their ship from basically open sea going in Lake Michigan to very narrow river and creek travel. They had to put up the shields, they had to take down the sails, and they had to put out the oars. And as I surveyed the site of Mud Lake in Lyons, Illinois, with Scott Walter of America Unearthed, it would have been very challenging to get the boat through the southern branch of the Chicago River, through Mud Lake to the Des Plaines River. But once you're in the Des Plaines River, even though it is quite narrow there, the water is flowing down and out, which connects to the Illinois River, which then connects to the Mississippi, and then takes you out into the Gulf of Mexico. You hug the Florida coastline, and then right before you leave the North American continent, guess what? They found another relic very much like the Wabanzi stone in northeastern Florida. So that would have been one more sacrifice of a baby, which was a Phoenician culture feature, that they would sacrifice a Native American child, perhaps bartering with a local tribe. The blood would flow through the cap, and I'll describe the Wabanzi stone. It's about the size of an infant bowl to take a bath or to put a baby in. There's a very strange hole that leads out from the bottom of the cavity on the top. And this is a very large boulder. It's about 5-6 feet tall originally. Now it's been chipped away. It was made into a fountain during the 19th century, but the face is still there. And the hole comes out the lips, and the lips are pursed and the eyes are closed, and it's a big fat face. It's such a unique face. I put it on the cover of Sacred Places North America. And the blood presumably would come out of the pursed lips and into a catch basin on the chin. And the chin was shaped in the form of a beard. Well, Native American people aren't known to have had beards, nor have they been known to carve in very heavy granite stone such as this. So it would be an absolute first for Native Americans to depict themselves with facial hair and to carve in very difficult granite stones, such as this glacial erratic stone.
Now, is this the one in Florida or the one?
Oh, this is the Wabanzi stone, but it's called a Tophet, and that's basically a Phoenician sacrificial altar. This is what was found in both locations, is just the Tophet stone of the sacrificial altar. And so the blood would then flow out from the bottom of the goatee right into the waters of the Chicago River. And this would be a blessing to the Phoenicians, that they would have a successful voyage on this most dangerous section of the trip, which is through the river waterways of North America until they reached the open ocean in the Gulf of Mexico. And then, of course, crossing over the same way Columbus went, catching the Gulf Stream across the Atlantic, would just basically take you right to Spain or North Africa, and then it's through the Pillars of Hercules, Gibraltar, into the Mediterranean. And then, so people that may have a hard time understanding this, just imagine if you were a young man in Phoenicia, same as today, and you had an opportunity to go as a merchant marine on a trip, and if you came back successfully with a full cargo hold of copper, you'd be a multimillionaire. A lot of people would sign up for that. I probably would have at a younger age. But the point is, there's a profit motive in doing a trip like this, even as dangerous as it was. And certainly there would have been ships that never made it back, and those mariners either lost at sea or perhaps killed off by Indians. But the history of the Phoenicians in North America is a long and rich one, and a part of history that still needs to be fully told.
This is the first time I heard that they performed sacrifices.
Oh,
that's surprising to me.
Yeah, they in ancient Carthage, there are still quite a few Tophet altar stones that do remain. It's now the country of Tunisia, and basically where the Arab Spring started, that small country in North Africa. And they're still there, and they look remarkably similar to these other two Tophet stones in North America. So again, like the beehive chambers, when you have a facsimile somewhere that is so incredibly similar to what is found here in North America, it shouldn't be too much of a stretch of the imagination to say that they're probably built by the same people.
Right. Well, I myself fully believe that we have had more than one culture invade America way before Columbus.
Yeah.
I don't see there being that much money in Columbus Day in order to keep it as a holiday.
Well, also keep in mind that Christopher Columbus, till his dying day, believed that he discovered the islands off of India, and that's where the term West Indies comes from. And the term Indians, he thought they were from India. So he never even knew till he died thinking that he had made it all the way around the world to Asia, not even realizing he discovered an entirely new continent.
Wow, now that's another fact. I'll tell you what, you're surprising me.
Oh, I got a lot more where that came from. We haven't even gotten into the ex-politics side of things.
I'll tell you that like I said, I'm only part way through your book, but it is pretty awesome so far. And the subjects you touch on, you touch on everything from DNA to evolution and everything in between. Every esoteric subject that I think holds any validity, or that's probably the wrong word for it. But you have amassed a great wealth of knowledge, and I'm glad you're out here sharing it with the people.
Oh, well, as I said after my interview on Ancient Aliens, and a couple of cameramen said I did a great job, I said, I aspire to inspire until I expire. So just doing what I do best. And
that's an awesome quote, too.
telling a good storyline, but what I believe is an untold history chapter. And I really applaud Scott Walter for all the work he's done with America Unearthed, and he and I are absolutely on the same page with many of these ancient finds, including the stone chambers. And he's visited just about all the big ones as I have, and we're both equally fascinated with these what I call prehistoric stone chambers of New England.
Me and Mark has had him on a couple of times. He is an awesome guest. He's got great knowledge, and he goes about it in a scientific manner.
Yeah, he sure does. And I really like the graphics they employ on the show that show the looking at it through a different lens. And his title is forensic archaeologist. I think that's pretty cool.
so, so do you think that our science is finally catching up to esoteric beliefs, or do you think it's the other way around?
I actually think it's the other way around. I think it started out that a lot of knowledge was known, especially way back in antediluvian times, such as Lemuria, Atlantis, and even earlier civilizations, according to Madame Blavatsky and the Theosophical Society, that there's a long history of high-tech civilizations that had once existed on Earth. Now we're talking hundreds of thousands of years ago, so finding traces of them now is very difficult, but it still can be done. And you can see in Modern Esoteric, I offer some photos of some underwater ruins off of the islands of Okinawa, Yonaguna, I think it's pronounced, that have these steps
It's
and
pretty awesome
levels,
looking place.
terraces. Yeah, just incredible. That
What fascinates me about that particular place is the whatever they cut off there is not laying around there.
No, that's right. It's cut right into the raw stone, and these are right angles and very straight lines, which nature rarely, if ever, can produce, but not on this scale, not on in this size. And here's a site that's about 100 feet underwater and a megalithic site that's only been discovered in the last few decades. Just one of many underwater
It would have been
sites.
at least 12,000 years old to be above sea level.
That's right.
That's the estimate, anyways. But I wonder what they done with them stones. They carried them somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, but if we're talking about 12,000 years old, even if they created a megalithic temple or some kind of structure, probably with the tides and tsunamis from time to time would have knocked it out. Of course, the ocean's very fluid with the moving of the water, so relics underwater do not last as well as they would above ground. But then when they're above ground, then they're susceptible to different generations of people dismantling them, so they don't always
using them for
last.
building material, like
Yeah,
in
yeah, absolutely.
Cairo, in the pyramids, the
Bob
limestone
Stone will
covering.
tell you. That's right, and Bob Stone will tell you at America's Stonehenge, what you see is just a fraction of what it was, and they had used the site as like an open quarry to just come and grab all the cobblestone or large stones you want. In fact, the town of Lawrence, Massachusetts, all their curbstones came from America's Stonehenge, just readily available quarried stone.
That's another thing I'd never heard Dennis talk about, is that the curbstones from that city came from there.
Yeah, you should get Dennis on the show.
I've had him on about 4 times.
Oh, okay, all right.
I really enjoy him. He's a great talker, and he's got a lot of information. And I'm one of the believers. I've never been there, but Mark Eddie, my co-host for Mondays, he's been there. He's met Dennis, and he's really intrigued with it. And from the pictures that I've gotten to see, that he's taken and stuff, I'm really intrigued with it. I do believe it's one of the oldest sites in North America, if not the oldest.
Oh, absolutely. And Dennis will tell you, as I said earlier, that they found crystals and done some radiocarbon dating on the wells and some of the older.
They're in the process
stones
of doing some excavation right now.
That goes back over 3,000 years, and that's about the time when the Phoenicians were here, charting, exploring, and exploiting the resources of North America. And remember, this is what has driven explorers over here from Europe since the beginning, starting with the Phoenicians, but also the Vikings, who I'm very interested in learning about, and reading the sagas, the Greenland and the Iceland sagas, which describe Leif Erikson coming over to North America after becoming Christianized in Norway as a teenager, was already the captain of his own ship. His father was Eric the Red, who started the Greenland settlements after being exiled from Iceland, sailed over to Greenland and found a spot on the northwest side that supported grasslands that they could support their livestock. And then Leif Erikson became the first among them to be Christianized with his crew when he went back to Norway. He got to the Greenland colony, and there was another mariner there who said, "Hey, I was blown off course. I went all the way to what is now today known as the Labrador coast of Canada." He said, it's a big land over there. Maybe you can go over there and find some trees. I didn't see any on the Labrador coast, but if you go a little further south, there's bound to be trees, and we need trees. They didn't have wood in Greenland. That was
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize
drawback.
that lumber was a top product at that time, in demand, heavy.
Oh, big time. Of course, their ships required lumber. So you break a mast or something like that, your ship's almost worthless. So Leif's main objective was to go find timber. And he went to all these different lands, and he described them fairly well. And the farther south he went, the bigger the trees got. But at his final stop and the destination, he named Vinland, which stands for Wineland. It's where wild grapes grow wild. And the only place they grow wild on the East Coast is from Connecticut to southern Maine. So we think he landed right there at Cape Cod region, actually south of it, called Buzzards Bay, close to the border of Rhode Island. And that's where Leif Erikson's Vinland was. They spent over a year harvesting wood, and he had this slave on his ship named Riker, as described in the sagas. And this slave was from Germany and knew how to produce wine. So they were already creating timber to take back. So they fashioned some barrels. He knew how to ferment the grapes that they found growing wild. And when Leif came back, not only did he have a cargo hold full of prime lumber, but barrels of wine. And that's why from that time on, he was known as Leif the Lucky, because he had just struck it rich. It would have been like the Phoenicians coming back with a cargo hold of copper. But at that point, Leif Erikson's father, Eric the Red, was either sick or had passed away, and he had to take control of the Greenland colony. And in fact, Leif Erikson never made it back to North America. But his brothers and his sister did on subsequent voyages. And they went right to Leif's longhouse there at Buzzards Bay. But there has been
Don't they believe they found that?
They did find it, but there has been a concerted effort with those stodgy historians I brought up earlier that will not have any part of Vikings in New England.
The Estonians in black?
Yeah, even though in the 19th century, the poet named Longfellow wrote this elaborate poem called A Skeleton in Armor. And in fact, nearby at Fall River, Massachusetts, a skeleton wearing a full suit of armor, not the kind of medieval armor, but more like armaments, chainmail, and some other brass armaments, was found. A very tall man with long hair, which is believed to be Eric's younger brother, Thorvald, who was shot by an Indian, like in his armpit region, and he died a slow death. And he said, "Bury me in the land of Vinland." And that's Fall River, Massachusetts, the skeleton in armor. This incredible find, which was actually discovered by a relative of Lizzie Borden many, many years before the infamous murder. She was digging in a sand pile in the springtime and created a little avalanche of sand, which revealed the body. And it was quite a sensation. And it was in a museum for a number of years. And that's when Longfellow came and was inspired to write his poem, Skeleton in Armor. But just as mysterious as the relic was, it went up in flames, and they think it was arson that destroyed the skeleton armor once and for all. So it has been lost to posterity, but the poem remains and the legend remains. And I actually went there and took photos of a plaque on the wall in Fall River where the skeleton armor was found.
Is that also the place where they found the rock with the carving of the man in armor?
That's also in Massachusetts, and there are many.
I don't remember the names of all these.
Yeah, there are
places.
quite a few, actually.
Yeah, I know.
Some more elaborate than others, but indeed, petroglyph sites, and one that I feature in Sacred Places North America is Peterborough, Ontario, Canada. And this is right along that Trent Severn waterway, and it contains a cornucopia of different symbols and ideograms, petroglyphs carved into the rocks, including Kokopelli, the flute player, like the Peter Pan of the Southwest. There's even a Kokopelli at Peterborough, as well as many archaic Norway symbols, which I found to be the most fascinating. Symbols that are only found in Scandinavia and Peterborough, only places. Those are the really old ones. Now, the ones in Massachusetts, some of them can be tied to the Vikings, others even to the Knights Templar. And I know Scott Walter has done some shows about retracing the steps of the Knights Templar coming to North America, including Oak Island off of Nova Scotia, Canada, and the mysterious Newport Tower in Rhode Island. I went and visited that location as well when I was working on Sacred Places North America. Many presumed it to be a Viking location because it looks like a medieval round lookout tower. Has really
sure
no
ain't
resemblance.
A lighthouse.
Well, it could have been a lighthouse because it has a fireplace on the second story location. I have pictures of it in my book that I took. Well, I walked across the street to a bookseller and I asked them, who do you think built the Newport Stone Tower? And that guy, who's been in Newport his whole life, and I think Scott would back this up, were the Knights Templar in the 13th and 14th century. That is about 150, 200 years before Columbus got to the Caribbean. The Knights Templar were here, and they were basically fleeing persecution in Europe. And their refuge was Scotland. And in Scotland, you have the Rosslyn Chapel, which is very enigmatic location with carvings of what look like corn. Corn only grows in North America, and other very subtle symbology that would suggest that the Knights Templar had not only gone to North America, but set up a small colony and even sailed back perhaps several times.
Do you think they could have been the white tribe that the Indians in the Ohio Valley area thought?
And that's the other thing that's so unique about North America is that you had all these tribes of white Indians down in North Carolina and Virginia, kind of right around the border. There were reports of a white tribe of Indians that spoke Welsh. When the first Europeans sailed up and finally reached what is today New England, they reported on the Narragansett Indians being very tall, very white. And these are small, like Italian and Spanish sailors who were coming over here. And they said, we were dwarfed next to these guys. And as you said, in the Ohio River Valley, of course, we haven't even talked about the mound sites yet and some of the discoveries there. I know Mark Eddy is very active. And
he lives right in the middle of them all.
Yeah, right in the middle of them all. He's probably got his foot on a shovel somewhere right now, pulling out a...
He'd love it, I think, but I don't think he's able to get permission to do it yet. He's been to a couple excavations so far.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for that. I mean, he's really a boots on the ground kind of guy. doing what he says. And maybe he's holding a giant skull with a double row of teeth right now. Who knows?
But
Hopefully.
yeah, I'm kind of interested in the skulls because my grandfather was over 7 foot tall. And I'm
Wow.
just a little bitty guy, though. I'm just over 5 foot. But when I was a kid, they removed 16 extra teeth from my mouth.
No kidding.
So,
16?
oh, that's kind of weird.
That's very weird. And you were telling me before the show started that you're RH negative too.
Right.
Well, there you go. Maybe you are.
It kind of got brought up on the show before us. In fact, that's why it was on my mind, and I read it in your book too. You had a little segment in there about the blood.
Yeah, indeed. My family too has a lineage of RH negative blood. In fact, my
Part of the Giants. I want to know what the hell went wrong.
yeah, what went wrong? Well,
yeah, I'm only 5 foot.
well, I'm 6'9", so to many people, I'm a giant. But not as big as some of these finds they found. And you'll see in Modern Esoteric, I have the picture of the San Diego giant. That was about 8 or 9 feet tall, standing next to these two little researchers who dug up a mummified body of an 8-foot tall man in San Diego. They've also found them in the Channel Islands and a site that I describe in Sacred Places North America that I went and visited out in Nevada called the Lovelock Cave. And they found a dozen of these mummified giants with red hair, very well preserved.
So you actually got to visit the cave itself, then?
Oh yeah, yes, I did.
I that was awesome.
I went in it, took photos. Of course, all the artifacts have been taken out. You can go to some of the small museums around the area, such as the Lovelock Museum, and Carson City has some artifacts of the Lovelock culture. The stuff they found in the Lovelock Cave and a couple other caves around what was once a prehistoric inland sea called Lake Lahoshan. It was so big, it pretty much encompassed all of northwestern Nevada. It even went into parts of California as well as Oregon. It was that big. It would have been the size of the Great Lakes in the Great Basin of Nevada. And all around the shores of Lake Lahoshan are these caves. And I know of at least 3 or 4 of them where they found these giant mummies. And they were so unique in their cultural traits, such as the giant sandals that they created out of tule reeds, and the duck decoys that they'd use for hunting, and other artifacts that they found. So unique, so different from all the other Native American cultures that they had to give them their own distinction. And they're called the Lovelock culture because most of the artifacts came out of this Lovelock cave. In fact, there's even a lore of the Paiute Indians in the region. One of the daughters of a chief, her name was Sarah Winnemucca. In fact, the town of Winnemucca, Nevada, was named after her family. She wrote a book and told the story. This is back in the 19th century, but through oral history of their battle with these giants and how the Paiute Indians finally got them all cornered in the Lovelock Cave. And they created an avalanche so the giants couldn't get out. And then they created all these fires near the entrance, and the smoke percolated through the avalanche rocks and basically exterminated them all. And then they just left the cave. I mean, that was like a haunted site to them. They really didn't want anything to do with it. And it was only discovered by a couple collectors of guano, which is basically bat poo that was used in the 19th century to used as fuel, basically like mud patties. And they were digging in these deep levels of guano when they finally came upon some of these mummies. And it was quite a sensation. A lot of people knew about it. There's a lot of stories that were written at the time, but unfortunately, they were souvenir collectors. And this is the case with most of the mound sites in the 19th century. Just people seeking a fortune would crack into some of these mounds, and this is everywhere from Oklahoma to Ohio, Florida to Wisconsin, wherever the mound sites were. And they would dig in there and just sell the souvenirs on the side of the road. Went to Spiro Mounds in Oklahoma, and a very rich legacy of mounds and burial tombs, including a skeleton armor, once again, found in Spiro, Oklahoma, sold on the roadside in the 1930s as souvenirs. So unfortunately, many, many of these artifacts have been lost. But fortunately enough, have remained, as well as, and this is what I'll tell people who have a hard time believing that there were giants found in North America, just look at all the old newspaper clippings that go back into the 19th century, but also like at the beginning of the 20th century. And they're usually in small town newspapers, and they'll say a bunch of fortune seekers were digging in the local mounds and they came across this giant, sometimes really tall or even with double rows of teeth. I mean, almost unbelievable by today's standard, but a repetitive theme that you see and can read about in many different cases, leading me to believe that the Phoenicians were actually kind of newcomers here, that there had been very old civilizations on the North American continent that may have gone way, way back, and even to the time perhaps of like Atlantis, Lemuria, and even further. Maybe these giants were the Anunnaki of Bible fame, the Nephilim, who lived here and maybe ruled over some of the smaller humanoid types. But this is something the Smithsonian really will have nothing to do with. It's almost like
they hide a lot of it, don't they?
Yeah, it's almost like the CIA or the special ops team coming in on a UFO crash. They have a special team that'll come in to an archaeological site, and wow, that's great. You guys found one of these giant mummies. We'll take it from here. You guys have done great. Just go home now. We've got it covered.
That's one thing that all the old newspaper accounts say. The Smithsonian shows up, and then there's no other news about it.
That's right. And in fact, it's called Smithsonian Gate because they've done it so many times and it's so controversial that if they show up, you'll never hear about it ever again.
Well, they did it in a little place in off one of the islands off of Alaska. They found a whole tribe there of skeletons that was reported, and then nobody's heard anything from it. It happened back in the 70s, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm. And also in the Grand Canyon, they found some Egyptian artifacts in this incredible cave high up on the mountain. And if you know the lay of the land around the Grand Canyon, there are many place names with Egyptian names, such as the Mesa of Osiris and Isis Mountain and all kinds of names.
They sure didn't run out of Indian names, did they?
No, they didn't. But what's so fascinating is that when this Egyptian tomb with many different artifacts was found, it was on the front page of a Phoenix newspaper, and those clippings are still available. You can read the whole account. And once again, Smithsonian came in a few weeks or month later. So we're taking over here, folks. Did a great job. Now just go on home. And that's the last I've heard of it. Now, what's so very interesting about that is that whole area is cordoned off. You cannot go into that region where they said they found this.
There's our break. Yell out your website real quick.
cccpublishing.com, bradolsen.com, and Esoteric Series on YouTube.
Welcome back, folks. This is a Mad Painter, a.k.a. Thomas Becker, and I'm filling in for Mark Snyder tonight on Ohio Ectopolitics Radio, and my guest is Brad Olsen, and I think the conversation's going good, but to keep conversations like this going, y'all need to contribute. So if you got a buck or two, we'd sure appreciate it. Come to the homepage, which is www.freedomslips.com, and check out the offers we have there for donations. The seed pack, you just can't beat it, and now's the time to get it. $100 and you get 35,000 seeds, 56 varieties, and 900 survival documents. And spring is just around the corner. So if I were you, I'd get your order in now. Brad, I really enjoyed the first half of the show. It's been a great talk. I've learned quite a few things. I'll tell you what, you're a plethora of knowledge.
Well, thank you very much. I do kind of have a photographic memory for things that interest me. I not only remember what I read and research, but always remember to expand upon it and build upon what I know. And I have to say that's the one good thing about getting older is we become wiser, and we can build upon what we've learned in the past and become
Don't tell
smarter.
me that. I'm in my second childhood. Now, what do you see? Now, what I read in your book. Now, I've only read the first part of your book, and what I see there is the history of esoteric beliefs. And what do you see for mankind's future?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I am a very optimistic person. And in the next book, Future Esoteric, goes into some scenarios in the final section called Utopia section. And I do present a dystopian view of how things could go terribly wrong, how we could purge the planet of most living things through the folly of nuclear, biological warfare, and send us back to basically living in the Stone Age. I don't think anybody
Sticks and
in their right
stones
mind
again?
can see that. Yeah, well, it was Einstein who said the Third World War or the Fourth World War after the nuclear age will be fought with sticks and stones again. But we don't want that to happen. I think we are on a trajectory of evolution, and that's why every generation should presumably be smarter than the last. And by doing so, we accumulate knowledge. This is how civilization advances. And this is how we can reach a utopian scenario. So we're basically riding on the razor's edge, and it can flip-flop either way. So, of course, I want to see us reach a utopian scenario similar to the views that were shown on the original Star Trek episodes, which was screenplays written by the great Gene Roddenberry, who was basically sitting in on seances in the Council of Nine and basically channeling the people he was listening to were channeling future Earth humans who were basically 350 years in our future, and we're living a Star Trek-like civilization. And that's why in Star Trek, they're very peaceful when they visit another lesser developed civilization. They practice the Prime Directive, which is actually a very real cosmic code, and that's why the benevolent ETs have not made very outward contact with humans yet, because they believe that we need to do this ourselves, as well as other things on the original Star Trek shows, like you never see the use of money anymore. So apparently 350 years in our future, there will be no money, and we will reach an age where everything is just given to anybody who needs it. And it's my understanding that this is how the benevolent societies work. And in fact, they think it's quite an anomaly that we even still have money. So one of the chapters in Future Esoteric is called The End of Money. And I'm a big advocate that the sooner that we can get rid of it, the better, because all it does is it enslaves the human race and gets us closer to that scenario B of Third World War and enslavement. And let's
Makes for
face
big
it,
egos too, don't it?
It sure is, and let's face it, wars in the last century, or perhaps of all time, have always been resource wars. It's always been to take what the other guy has, in more recent times about oil, and no wonder the Middle East is in the middle of such turmoil, because it has all the oil in the world, the lion's share at least.
I
So we
believe
have to.
water is going to be the next major thing.
I think you're right. Maybe the Great Lakes of the Midwest will be the.
Well, they're already selling it to China.
Yeah.
From my
Yeah.
understanding, they send ships over and well, pretty much just fill up and take it over there.
Yeah. So my point is, I'm hoping that the human race will have this great waking up, and people are going to become aware that there is a cabal of the elite industrialist bankers in the world who very, very much do want to see us enslaved in their new world order. So we're riding on the razor's edge, because they are implementing it now as we speak. And for people who want to know more about this side of esoteric, which is the dark side, I leave it to my author Leo Lyons-Zagami, who has been one of them and basically broke away from them, and saying that this is a terrible course for humanity to be on. And I'm very, very proud of him for being as outspoken as he is and forthright with his information, because it's
I
been a
need to.
wake up call to me. The Confessions of an Illuminati series, and his first book called Pope Francis, the Last Pope. The Catholic Church is not who most people think it is.
I fully agree with that. Now.
Have a dark past.
There's something ain't right there.
The pedophilia scandal is really just the tip of the iceberg, and they're making a move right now too. They're part of it. They're part of this new world order, and their role will be to implement a one world religion. And we're actually seeing that taking place right now. I don't know if you caught the news yesterday, but the Pope met with the Eastern Orthodox Church top people in Cuba. And he's also met with imams who have visited the Vatican and prayed towards Mecca from St. Peter's Square and the Vatican itself. He's also made inroads with Judaism, top leaders in world religions around the world. So this is the plan. If you know what's going on, you'll see it transpiring right before our eyes. You're certainly not getting the information you need from television or the news as they report it, because that's basically propaganda of this global elite, and they will not turn on themselves. I mean, that's the first rule of conquest, is you don't give away your own secrets. But it's the independent media. It's guys like you and Freedom Slips Radio, and I heard you make a call for support. And this is it, people. This is what's keeping the flame of free thinking alive. So please do support this radio network I've been on many, many times, and what you guys are doing over there is really great. I fully support you and commend you in your work.
This is hard to do. A lot of people don't realize that putting on a show each week or two shows each week is really hard. The ones that really work hard are the ones that put on a daily show. I can't believe they can actually do that. Yeah. It's just, there's a lot of work involved in it, and bring this many people together that to make the station like this work. And it's not just this station. There's a lot of stations out there doing it. That everybody volunteers to do this and bring the information out. I think the internet is one of the biggest mistakes the elite ever done, was by letting it out.
That's right. Well, remember what is it? One of the Rockefeller brothers said. He says, we should have never allowed the internet to become free. We should always kept it under locks, under the guise of national security. I think it was Jay Rockefeller. And they mean it. They're scared, shaking in their boots, that people are finally waking up and finally seeing through this thin veneer of lies and illusion, or as Leo Lion-Zagami describes, this egregore, this group think, and this spell that we're under. And this is how they do it, is through the media, through repetition, through selling a story. Even Hitler himself said it. You wanna spread a big whopper of a lie, make it a big one, and just keep repeating it.
Yeah, tell
And
it
sooner or
often.
later, they're gonna believe it. And it's crazy uh, that it works just as they've said it works. And then you have people like Bernays, the father of PR, who was working with Sigmund Freud. And so they've been learning how to manipulate the mind on a mass level for over 100 years.
If
So
you
you
just watch
gotta,
the evolution of advertisement, you can see it.
absolutely. And there are very subtle things. There's the subliminal programming. There is the frequencies that are emitted from a television or even from cell phone towers. They have ways of getting into people's mind, quite literally. And this is going back to the MK Ultra stuff and the really wicked mind control experiments that were done decades ago. And you just got to think they're only getting better. They're only getting more technology and more manipulative in their efforts. And they're getting to the point where they have to make their big move very soon. If they don't, they're going to be exposed. They're going to be rounded up. They're going to be arrested. And I would like to think put on trial rather than lynched. And that is how we get to the golden age. There has to be the mass arrest first. If you ever wake up one morning and see Henry Kissinger and David Rockefeller and George Soros and the Rothschilds being arrested, that is a great day for humanity. That is what we all want to wish for and hope for and dream about, because that will usher in the end of the New World Order, and then the healing process that will take place after. I would like to think along the lines of South Africa, truth and reconciliation process of just understanding the manipulation that we've gone through, put these people on trial, lock them away for the rest of their lives so they can't do any more damage, and let's just get on with it. And then we can release free energy technology. Then we can start working towards understanding what's been going on in outer space, the secret space program, or like my friend Richard Dolan describes, the breakaway civilization that has resulted. And this ties into the exopolitics, is hopefully making meaningful contact with benevolent ETs and bringing us to a light speed advancement where the light bulb just starts going off on
You,
everybody's minds around the world.
it,
This critical mass or 100th monkey effect moment when people just get it, when they intuitively know that this is who we are in this world and the greater universe beyond.
you don't think us having open contact with a more advanced civilization might bring about the destruction of our own civilization?
Well, there is evilness, for lack of a better term. There are malevolent ETs in the world, and those malevolent ETs have been manipulating humans for a long time. Those are the ones who are tied in with the New World Order. The Greys, the reptilians, they're real. They live underground. They've been here for thousands of years. And if you think about satanic rituals, who exactly is Lucifer that is worshipped by these elites? It kind of all starts making sense, because I grew up an atheist. Okay. I believed in none of this stuff. I thought it was all stupid. I thought it was mythology, things from the Bible. But now I'm kind of coming around to realize there is oftentimes truth within mythology, within stories that have held up to the test of time. And as a result, as I wrote in the conclusion to Future Esoteric, maybe all these stories of the devil and Satan and Lucifer are one and the same as another one of these reptoids who are fourth dimensional, highly psychic, telepathic beings who can phase in and out of our reality. So they could appear at certain rituals where these elite like to gather and even have sacrifices. And this all kind of starts to make sense. Well, they've had a stranglehold on the human race for a long time. And I just love the quote from William Cooper, who spoke at the UFO Congress in 1989. It's one of the greatest videos that's out there. It's a grainy video, but you can find it on YouTube. And he says it was learned and has been known that aliens have been manipulating humans through secret societies, witchcraft, magic, the occult, and religion. If you can kind of wrap your head around that, you can kind of see how all this stuff starts making sense. The black magic rituals, the reptoids' taste for human blood, they do like to eat us, especially in adolescence age before we become polluted from all the toxins that are being introduced to our bodies over time. And this also ties into the blood rituals that we've seen in many different cultures throughout many times. Say, for example, the Mayans and the Aztecs ritually sacrificing thousands of people. And this mysterious being Quetzalcoatl would appear and drink the human blood. All these things start to tie in. All these things start to make sense, that we have been under the control, as Leo Lyons-Agami says, this egregore, this mindset, this mind control, a mass mind control of our planet. And only now, for the first time in thousands of years, is humanity finally awakening and finally realizing its great potential. And that potential is that we are masters, that we have a pineal gland that is currently closed down, but if awakened and opened up, will make us fourth and even fifth dimensional entities within our own lifetime. So not only are we on the brink of this great transformation of society and our civilization here on the planet, but a transformation of the human mind itself, which could make us astral travelers, which could give us these superhuman abilities, which I describe in a chapter in Future Esoteric, that would allow us to leave our body at will, knowingly, and access the timeline of history and look at any event critically and understand that history has been greatly manipulated, that well, there's an old saying that history is written by the victors, and that's absolutely true. The winners of wars write the history, not the true history that actually went down, but as they would like us to believe the history that went down. But other amazing things that we'll have the ability to do, such as telepathy, telekinesis, even moving or bending spoons like Uri Geller does. And all the chapters in the book called Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda, which I read while I was traveling in Europe and was so utterly inspired that each chapter was a different yogi or a different guru that came into Yogananda's life or that he heard about. And each chapter was a different human ability that they were able to utilize. And to think that we may all have the capacity to do this, but we just haven't been trained. We haven't been tipped off because we've been so controlled by this egregore mind control setup that has basically kept us enslaved and entrapped.
We've been clouded and shown, you know what I mean? It's always been there, you know, I believe. Our minds have been clouded with so much of the everyday getting the life taken care of that we've lost that connection, you know?
And we've lost these.
I think it's still there.
Oh, it is still there. It's just latent. It's just waiting to be reawakened. And once it does, and I think this is why the elites are shanking in their boots, because once it does, it is game over for them. They cannot control us. And I'm not just talking about the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and the George Soros of the world. Indeed, they're merely the captains and the majors. The real generals in this are what David Icke describes as these reptilian entities. And some of their bloodlines are in these 13 elite bloodline families who have an iron grip control over the rest of us. And that's through the control of money, that's through the control of media, and that's through controlling government, just to name the big three. And once that facade is cracked, it's quite like in The Wizard of Oz when Toto pulls the curtain and there's a little old man manipulating the controls. And it's basically, don't look at that man behind the curtain, you know, and the Wizard of Oz is shooting the flames and scaring everybody else. Yeah. And once we'll find that they're just these old men who are basically that are ready to die anyways, and they just want to take the world down with them. Well, that's not going to happen. And we're going to have a great awakening, and it's going to be a beautiful time to be alive. But I think there's going to be some rough times before we get there, and they're not going to go down easy, and they could very easily collapse the economy and or take down the grid. So we go into a blackout phase, and then that could get really ugly if the power went out and nobody had access to money. The ATM machines didn't work.
A lot of people don't realize if the power goes out, we're going to lose quite a few people just from the medical.
That's correct.
Up
to a machine is basically a goner if the power goes out, even just
or medications that need refrigerant and stuff like that. Do you think that this is actually what the Mayan prophecies was referring to instead of, destroying the world or destruction of the world? That it's just a great awakening that's happening now?
I do think so. And this is the age of Aquarius. This is the dawning of a new consciousness on the planet. I don't like to use the term New Age because that's been so incredibly manipulated. But there is a very discernible turning point that has happened in the last decade or so. Call it 2012, but it's not just that one particular date. It's really the last decade or so. There has been a shift, and maybe it has been facilitated through the internet becoming so ubiquitous around the world and so accessible to so many different people. I mean, the internet is like the new Library of Alexandria on steroids. You have everything at your fingertips. It's such an incredible tool to utilize the knowledge of planet Earth.
I believe it's really our mechanical attempt to get back at our global shared consciousness that we used to have before all this religion and control and stuff.
And so just like on a macro level with the internet, how now the very first signs of censorship, of websites going down, of even Facebook favoring certain posts over others. So once again, we're riding the edge of the razor, and we're seeing it in just about every aspect of our lives, including this great tool called the internet. And if it ever does go into full censorship mode, I really fear that could turn for the worst. But I think we're at the breaking point. I think we're already making that turn where we're like at the point of no return, and that is these criminals who have tried to enslave us and are still trying very hard to implement this new world order in the next few years. They're going to be defeated, and that's going to be a beautiful moment for humanity when they are.
Yeah, I hope so too. I do it myself. I believe we're in for a hard time, but I think it's something that the human race needs to go through. Why I think that, I'm not sure.
Well, just remember the darkest period of night is just before the sunrise. It's also the coldest time of night. And I think we're at that hour. We're at an hour before daybreak. And even when the sun starts coming up, it's still very cold outside. If you've ever gone camping, it'll take a while for things to warm up. It'll take a while for the light to really envelop everyone everywhere. But once it does, that's it. We are on the road to the golden age. And I hope we see it in our lives, and I hope we can get through some of the speed bumps that are going to come in our way, because they're not going to go down easy. In fact, they've even said, you may have to kill us before we give up. So they're going to try every dirty trick in the book before they go down. But I think their days are numbered. And the more people that wake up, the more people that resonate with some of the things we're talking about here tonight, the closer we are, because it really is a person to person building upon what we know, a networking of our friends and family, and just waking people up to this new reality. And this new reality is what I've chronicled in my esoteric series of books. And I realize this information isn't for everybody, but for the few who do find this information valuable, then you're the exact target market. You're the people
Well,
who need to read this.
the information I've read so far is solid scientific evidence. You're not putting in your own. This is what I believe or anything like that. You're presenting scientific evidence, basically.
Right.
And I find that very interesting, because most people just skim over the fact that there is some scientific evidence for some of this stuff. And where the scientific evidence runs into a I don't know, then the esoteric explains it.
That's right. That's right. And this is a tradition that really goes back all the way to ancient Egypt and probably before them, that there were very advanced civilizations on this planet that were the progenitors of ancient Egypt. And I
They
remember
have
my dad.
way more knowledge than we do about it,
Absolutely. And my dad, who's a great historian, and we've had such fascinating talks for so long, he always said ancient Egypt was at its most refined state at its earliest point, and it began to degenerate since then. Now, that should be the opposite, where a civilization starts out very archaic and then becomes very refined. Whereas in
You
ancient
can see it
Egypt,
in their monuments.
absolutely. And you see it in the Great Pyramids, and you see it in the Osirian and the megalithic architecture that is the oldest artifacts of ancient Egypt, are the best produced. And this Osirian, I have an image of it in Modern Esoteric, has embossed in the rock, not carved, but like burned into the rock, the flower of life symbol. And as you get into the sacred geometry chapter in Modern Esoteric, you'll see how important the flower of life symbol is, that it is a representation of the cells dividing and the very origin of life itself blossoming and becoming a life form as we know it. So the fact that the ancients had this kind of wisdom, this kind of knowledge, and built upon, and we're only rediscovering it now.
Right.
It should stand as a testament of time that people long ago had some pretty mad wisdom.
For some reason, we do something about every 12,000, 15,000 years that knocks our butts back to the Stone Age.
Yeah, well, I think the Indians describe it well. They call them the Kali Yuga, the Yuga cycles, and there are times when we go into great darkness and amnesia and forget about what we know, and then there are periods like entering this age of Aquarius, the Mayan calendar, this new age. They all say the same thing, that we're coming into this age of increased awareness where people are just going to start having the light bulb go off. I mean, we're living in a time where there are still Stone Age people living in the jungles of South America and Papua New Guinea. And at the same time, we have this breakaway civilization of humans that are living in colonies on the moon and Mars, and the people of Earth don't even know about them. But that doesn't take away the fact that we have space age humans and we have Stone Age humans at the exact same time. But the common denominator is we're still human. Okay. And even though some of us are very primitive and most are very poor and live on less than $2 a day around the world, You have things like the internet. You have things like CERN and cell phones and computers and technology and backward engineered spacecraft, which are propelling humans throughout our solar system. But the problem is humans are quarantined to our solar system alone. And even though we have backward engineered successfully much of the technology that would allow us to tap into the wormholes and travel at the speed of light and go to far distant locations, we can't do it because the astronauts who have been trained to fly these crafts, they're basically jarheads. They're coming right out of the military. And in their basic training, they have been taught to kill and use arms and to fear an enemy. And they haven't been trained like a Buddhist. They haven't been trained to be at peace with themselves. And therefore, even though they have the technology, it's my understanding, and this is what I read in X6 magazine, that they have the ability to get there, but they get up to meet those conditions and boom, they got to come right back because they're not like these light beings who have been trained in meditation and the metaphysical sciences to allow them to be at one with the universe because they're still these military jarheads. So this is a bit of the problem that the breakaway civilization and the secret space program is having, as well as the fact that when you do meet those conditions, you're basically becoming your light body. And this is, again, something we're not even taught about or trained. And in that state of a light body, which is close to the speed of light, you're basically a fourth dimensional entity. And you're dealing with other fourth and fifth and higher dimensional entities. And we're just so far behind what other third dimensional entities, quite like us, say the Syrians or the Pleiadians, what they're able to do. But we have the potential, we have the capacity to become multi-dimensional, multi-talented, superhuman beings if given the right training and all the blockage taken away from us. And it will be an incredible moment to see the human race ascend this quickly and this efficiently if we are allowed to move in that direction.
I think that's one of the reasons we're seeing the escalation of what's happening in the world today is because they know we're close.
Yeah.
And they're scared of that fact.
Oh, yeah. And that's why they're trying their best to shut it down and start World War III and keep us all in a state of fear and introducing new viruses. Now we got Zika, last year was Ebola, and before that it was swine flu and bird flu and all these flus, and they're probably all coming right out of Fort Detrick, Maryland, and the biohazard laboratories there.
CDC.
Yeah. I mean, if all these viruses have been on the planet for so long, how come they didn't wipe us out long ago? It's what a coincidence they're all coming out right now.
Well, speaking of viruses and stuff, we have what's called junk DNA. Now, I don't think it's junk. I just think it's not activated. But you mentioned that some of it could be from viruses.
Well, that's correct. And it's not junk at all. It's just misunderstood. It's just not known what this dark DNA does. But perhaps this is part of becoming what I just described as humans being in touch with their light or astral selves, which is training in the spirit, which is training in understanding what our soul is. And once we start realizing that reincarnation is very much a real phenomenon, and we've been around a long, long time, and with the proper training, we can remember our past lives just like we can remember what we did yesterday. It's all in there. It's all ready to be accessed. We just have to remember or relearn how to access these memories. And this is true with our astral self. We've always got this light body with us. And when we dream at night, pay attention to your dreams because those are your adventures as your astral self. And they can tell you a lot about yourself. I wake up in the morning sometimes and I just have incredible knowledge of what I need to do that day. And I'll just get on write an email or do something that I need to do. And it's exactly the right thing to do. So it's important to pay attention to the messages that we've been given in our dreams. And also right when you're about to fall asleep, we're kind of at that halfway point where we're still conscious, but we're entering the dream state. And it's right there that you're really cognizant of your light body. And it's hard to do, but if you can remember that moment, and also at that time, you're also able to communicate with this other side of yourself, which, of course, upon death is indestructible and it remains. And eventually it will be reborn again, because this is the human dynamic, is that we're here to learn some lessons, and we're here to get it right. And it could take lifetimes to learn one single lesson.
One little bitty thing.
Kill people. You kill someone, you're carrying a heavy karmic burden, and you're probably not going to get through this lifetime without having to relearn that lesson, that everything we do, there's a cause and effect. And what we do and what we put into the world and who we influence and what we do for the positive or the negative, everything has a repercussion. So I always say, do the right thing all the time. Never tell a lie. Smile, help people out. I always give money to the homeless. It's not a problem. And I just try to increase the happiness, the generosity, whatever it is. If I can help someone out, I'm eager to do that. I look at it as an opportunity.
Service to others is service to self.
That is correct.
And I'm a firm believer that we all need to look within ourselves first before we're actually able to help the world. You really have to know your home. You know what I mean? We have to know us.
Absolutely. And a lot of people who are a little hung up on the ET question often say, don't get hung up on what they look like, how big their eyes are, if they have scales or not, or
yeah, that's just a vehicle.
Exactly. Just concentrate on whether or not they're service to self or service to others. And if they're service to others, they're the kind of benevolent ETs that we want to align ourselves with eventually. But they're also the ones who are the least interventionist. And as I said earlier, that the prime directive of Star Trek is a real cosmic law. And that is why they won't intercede on our behalf. And that is why the malevolent service to self ETs have basically had a run of the place for so long. But their game is up too. And these are the ones who we really want to bounce off this planet, get them out of here. They don't belong here. They're not welcome. And if you can kind of start to visualize that in your own way, in your own meditation, even when you're dozing off to sleep tonight, just say, you don't belong here, get out. And it's this Archon network, this egregore that has had control over the mass consciousness of humans for far too long, but it's starting to break down. And once it does break down fully, then we will truly know what freedom really means.
Right. I fully agree. Now, see, myself, you say, you know, when you're going to sleep, say, get out. Personally, I'm a firm believer that nothing has control of your soul unless you allow it.
That's right. That's right.
There's nothing more powerful than a human soul.
Yep. And unfortunately, most people do allow it.
Yeah, they don't realize that they're that powerful.
And they don't realize they're being
give up
to certain consciousness ceremonies, even sometimes like the halftime at the Super Bowl, not this year, but in previous years, or the London 2012 Olympics, how dark, and it was almost like a black mass was taking place and sucking people into this dark imagery.
Some believe they were.
Yeah, some do believe they were, and I would not dispute their claims to the otherwise. But that's the thing about waking up, is that when we start to see what is taking place on this planet and the level of manipulation, these things can't affect us anymore. It's like we're creating a bubble around ourselves and they just can't get through anymore. And that's what's breaking down on the macro level on in the Archon network, this egregore over the consciousness mind of the human race. They're not having the same kind of effect they used to have. And there's too many of us that are waking up to it and realizing that we're not going to have it anymore. And you don't even have to be violent or mad about it. You just have to be aware of it. And once you're aware of it, then it's a matter of that becomes your personal power. It's almost like if you wanted to become a black belt in karate, you're not just going to go down to the local karate studio and work out a few times and learn a few moves and become a black belt. No, it's something that's going to take more than months, more than years, probably decades to do. And we're talking about a lot of time commitment. We're talking about a lot of mental exercise, physical exercise that you have to get to that point. But once you become a black belt, that is your power for the rest of your life. And it's the same thing with learning many of these esoteric subjects. When you can finally wrap your head around them and when you really fully understand them, they become your power. And that is part of who you become as a human being in this lifetime. And that's why I think they're so vitally important. And they've absolutely changed my life for the better in many different ways. My health is better. My clarity of mind is better. And creating this bubble around myself that is not going to let the negativity take me down.
I look at martial arts as a devoted like meditation or ritual.
Mm,
It's something that you do all the time. It becomes a part of your way. You know what I
that's
mean?
right. That's right.
It's just like everybody sits down and prays before dinner. That come about with actually we started out with giving thanks for the food we received.
Right. Very much
And
so.
which developed into what we have as an evening prayer before a meal.
And just to give thanks. I mean, if
That's the key to thanks.
right.
It's not to an all powerful being. It's to the source.
If you identify with Christianity and that's your
That
way of giving
that yeah,
thanks, that's fine. But the point is to be grateful.
right.
And also, as I would recommend, to embody that in your everyday life. Be grateful to even complete strangers, because it has this ripple effect that has a way of bringing people up instead of bringing people down. And then again, that ties into your own karmic journey here on this planet. Are you here to help people out, or are you here to take them down? And I'll tell you, bringing people up is far more beneficial to your long-term karmic duties here on this planet. And believe me, we all have a duty. We all have responsibilities, and we all have a reason for being here. And people are starting to wake up to this and understand that their reason for being alive is vastly more important.
Well, that's one of the reasons why you want to look within, because that will give you the reason you're here, your
Yep.
purpose behind existing in this reality. Or that's my opinion now.
Well, no, I would back you up on that, and because when I spent the better part of my 20s traveling around the world, and mostly in Asia, and enmeshing myself in Eastern cultures, this is my great takeaway, is that this Eastern meditative mind state, or these chapters out of Autobiography of a Yogi, showing the mental capacities of a human and how that can not only change our physical bodies, but change the course of our karmic duties here in this body, in this lifetime, in this time frame we're in, has everything to do with who we are and how we're going to evolve and helpfully help change people, help change ourselves. Like the Temple of Apollo at Delphi, there were two words where the pilgrims would travel all through ancient Europe to come to the Temple of Apollo at Delphi. And the two words were know thyself. That's the most profound two words of a philosophical statement of all time. Just know thyself. And it could take a lifetime, maybe many lifetimes.
Yeah, I was going to say, you might not even get it right the first time.
No. And anybody who's feeling despair or suicidal or any kind of problems with money, or just remember, these are illusions. Money is an illusion. It is not real. It does not have to be a part of our reality. And I would like to see the day where it is gone, that it doesn't matter anymore, that we do become a race that actually cares about it ourselves. That
it only enslaves people.
It really does. And if we can get through it and beyond it, the sooner the better, the faster many, many people's lives can heal, and we can just move on. And that'll be a great day.
Well, we got about 10 more minutes or so, or a little bit less. I want to make sure you get your websites out there again and tell people the name of your books.
Sure. Thanks for that.
I think it's been an awesome evening, and I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I love it when 2 hours goes by in the blink of an eye, and you wonder where the time went.
It's not missing time. We haven't been a time.
So basically, if you want to learn more about me and some of the projects I work on, including, and I didn't even bring this up, my effort to be in service to others is a great big event that I co-produce here. I'm the founder of a street fair called the How Weird Street Fair on Howard Street. And we're going to have our 17th annual event coming up on May 1st at Howard and 2nd Street. I'll be working away. You may be able to catch a glimpse of me running by, but it's a great time out on the streets of San Francisco with DJs and bands and people dressing up in costumes. And the website for that is howweird.org. We really don't have to do any advertising because 25,000 people show up when they hear about it. Wow. It's such a great event. And
got to live stream it.
Yeah, we have toyed around with that idea. It's a kind of thing that we don't have to advertise anymore or spend any money at all on marketing because it's such a great event. People will find out about it, and we're already at capacity. So it's a good problem to have, not to have to beg people to come. It's quite the opposite. We just put a little bit of word out there through postcards and posters, which I design myself. I'm also an illustrator and graphic artist, and I have the great joy of creating the poster every year for the How Weird Street Fair. And go to bradolsen.com. You'll see a link. You can read up more about the How Weird. All my books are on cccpublishing.com. That's 3 C's in publishing, as well as the authors who are published through my organization, which is over 20 years old now and has Leo Lyons-Agami as the exclusive publisher of his books in English, which I'm working on. And you can go to my YouTube channel, which is Esoteric Series, and see some of my lectures on future esoteric and modern esoteric at the book release parties for that, as well as some older interviews I've done through the years. And let's see, on Facebook, I have the Esoteric Book Series page, the Sacred Places 108 Destination page, the CCC Publishing page, and my name, Brad Olsen, Olsen. Although if you don't know me, it's very hard to send a friend request because I guess I'm becoming a public figure. So that'll direct you to my public figure page, which is also Brad Olsen, and that one I do put up a lot of content on all of my pages. I try to keep going because these days you don't send emails anymore. People get annoyed with spam, so it's all about the social media and doing interviews like this and talking to you again, which has been quite enjoyable.
Social media is something else, isn't it?
It is something else, and to think 10 years ago, that wasn't even around. So what's the next 10 years going to bring?
Well, MySpace was around, but it fizzled out pretty quick.
Or Friendster. Yeah, I like the Onion article that archaeologists of a future age discover Friendster.
Well, the internet's still an evolving creature, just like humanity is.
Absolutely. It sure is. And of course, I invite your listeners to check out my books. You can find them on Amazon or in all the bookstores. If they don't have them, ask for them by name. The new one is what you're reading, Modern Esoteric, Beyond Our Senses. And Future Esoteric, The Unseen Realms, is coming out in April as a second edition, which has a dozen or more new images. I gave the whole text upgrade, rewrite, edit, added a lot of new information, and looking forward to promoting that in the coming months, probably right after How Weird, because my life gets real busy in the next few months.
Well, when that's ready for publication, let us know.
Absolutely.
Because, like I said, you've created a fan. I really, like I said, I've only gotten so far in your book, but it's pretty awesome. I can't wait to finish it, and I know I'm going to end up reading the other ones for sure.
Sounds great.
It's my kind of information, if you know what I mean.
Yep. And I'm happy.
It's hard to keep me interested in a subject.
You got a couple cool sections coming up in Modern Esoteric, including my way of being optimistic at the end in a section called Thrive. And these are some chapters, some of them relating to health, which I've used myself. And people always guess I'm 10 years younger than I really am. It's just amazing that all this information has been out there the whole time, yet only now are we, I would say, rediscovering a lot of this lost information.
I believe it's a rediscovery and not a discovery.
Yeah. Yep.
And once you know your purpose in life, well, you have many purposes, but once you know some of the purposes that you have for being in this reality, stuff seems to flow for you. You have health, you have good friends,
Right.
It works for you. Life really works for you if you know how to use it.
Hey, I was just up skiing up at Lake Tahoe, drove back yesterday, and that's a sport I love to do. And I was just up there with some old friends that I hadn't seen in 25 years, skiing like we were in our 20s again. So it's a great life if we make it out to be. And this is such a beautiful planet we live on, so worth preserving for future generations. And
well, a lot of people are not grounded with what we're supposed to be, with nature. With Gaia, or whatever you want to call it. We do need to be grounded, and the further away from being grounded, the worse our lives become.
Yeah. Well, that's why I love to go camping in the summer and be outside as much as I can. It's a great experience.
Well, Mark just come online. He said he might join us, but it's too late for him to join us now. He missed a great show. I really enjoyed talking with you tonight.
Well, we're going to have this on the archives.
Oh yes, sir. I'll make a YouTube of it. Send you a copy.
Sounds great. I'll post everybody who missed out, because I thought it was a great talk too. And thanks for letting me go off on a few tangents. Hopefully.
Oh no, this is what it's about. We like to get the views of people that you can't have a show where they repeat it on 7 different radio stations.
Right.
I mean, then you don't want to tune into them anymore.
Gets boring and old.
Yeah, it gets boring. So I think it worked out great. It's what a friend of mine calls string of consciousness, and we just ramble on, and it works out as a good conversation.
Absolutely. Well, we missed Mark on this show, but I'm glad he sounds like he got the chance to listen in partly. And thanks for having me on, Mark, and putting me in touch with you. And what a great night.